Now in this section of Mastering Excel, we're going to learn some pretty important skills, so I really need you to pay attention and practice these on your own. What we have here is a very simple little table that I put together. We've got some employees, Fred, Wilma, and Dino, along with myself. We've got our annual salary. We've got a raise that we plan to give these people during the year. We're going to do some calculations on how much that raise equates to. This is the yearly sales for these people. So Jason made sales of just over $6,000 for the year. Fred did make some sales, but ended up getting refunds, and so he actually lost $1,000 for the year. Wilma made some money, and then Dino, it was a net loss for the year also. You know, some years you have good years and some years you have bad. And we have a social security number and phone number of these people. So the point is there's lots of different kinds of data in this table. We have numbers, which are basically dollar signs. We have social security numbers, phone numbers, percentages, and so on. So what we want to do is explore how to format this data properly. Let's take a look first at the annual salary column. If I highlight these guys, it might be nice to display dollar signs, to actually have dollar signs with also decimal points. What about the decimal 00 cents for these guys? The easiest way to do that is to look up on the home menu. Once you've highlighted your data, look in the number category and you've got these little symbols. So the dollar sign, it tells you, is accounting number format. That's basically going to put a dollar sign on your data. So let's go ahead and click that. And you will see a couple of things happen. First of all, you're going to have a dollar sign for every entry that you have. It also puts two decimal places with zeros because in this particular case there's no change here for what we have here. And it also puts commas down there. So it's instantly more readable that we've got dollars and cents going on here than any other just having the number there. It's a whole lot more readable. So if you click it right off of the ribbon menu, that's what's going to happen. I want to point out to you something important. The dollar sign, when you click it on the ribbon menu, the dollar sign is always going to be off to the left. Your data is going to be off to the right. So it kind of separates the dollar sign from your data, which is going to be important later. I'll point something out to you there. Let me go ahead and undo that and show you what happens if instead of the dollar sign, you just click the comma format. If I click the comma format, what happens is I have my commas, I have my decimal 00, but I don't have the dollar sign symbol anymore. And that can be useful if I've got thousands of entries. I may not want to see a dollar sign running down this column for every single entry. It's not a problem here because I've got 4 or 5 lines. But if I've got a worksheet full of dollar signs, it's just not going to look very nice. So if it's implied, then I might put a dollar sign up here or something like that, and then I might change this to some format like that. All right, so let me go ahead and undo these things. Let me go ahead and take the dollar sign out of the title. So here we have our dollars and cents again. Let me show you something else. Let me take the dollar sign off and put it into comma format like we have here. So this is implying money, but it could also just be used for any number that you want to have the commas in there. Notice that there are a couple of buttons over here. This one says increase decimal. This one says decrease decimal. So if I click this button, then from my highlighted data, I'm going to be adding decimal spots after, or adding decimal places after the decimal point. And if I click this button, then I can take them away. So it's not terribly intuitive for this one, but what if I have a number of, let's put something like pi, right? 3.14159. That's what pi is. And in this particular case, it's because I've, the way the worksheet's set up, the way the default thing here is in this particular case is 2 decimal spots after the decimal point. But I can go here and I can show more decimal points. And if I keep clicking this, eventually what I typed in, if you look up in the status bar or in the formula bar, is 3.14159. After that, if you keep clicking that button, then you just get the zeros that are trailing like that. But I can kind of shrink it down, for instance, to the familiar 3.14. But I want to make sure you understand, if I click this, it says 3.14. Up here, it says 3.14159. So the point I'm trying to make here is no matter what you click here, and no matter how many decimal points are shown in the cell down here, what you see in this formula bar is the real value of what's in that cell. What you're doing here when you're increasing and decreasing decimals is you're just changing how it's displayed to you. So it doesn't affect calculations or anything if I add or subtract decimal points here. It doesn't affect anything as far as calculations. It just displays the decimals to you, with more or less detail. Okay, so for now, let me go off here and go back to accounting format. That's what that's really called with that $, accounting number format, which is really nice. Now let me jump over the raise. We'll get to that later. Let's go over to yearly sales. These are also numbers, right? These are also dollars actually. So if we go ahead and highlight this, in fact, we can highlight the whole column. Let's say we're going to be typing more information later, and we can click accounting number format here. A couple of things I want to point out to you. I've highlighted the entire column, including the title. When I put the $sign here, it doesn't put a $sign in front of the words yearly sales. It's smart enough to know that this is a text entry. It doesn't need a $sign. So when you highlight cells and click the accounting format, the number format, it's only going to put that $sign in places that make sense. Secondly, these were negative numbers, negative $1,024, negative $354. Accounting format, if you're an accountant, you know that you represent negative numbers with parentheses. So when you use accounting format like this, you end up with negative numbers represented as parentheses, which is exactly what you would expect. All right, now let's explore a few more options here. If I highlight this again, and I can do the comma and I can do the $sign, which is the accounting format. But if you notice under here, this is the number group. There is a additional detail menu, which you can have more options for. So if I click this, then this dialog box is brought up to the forefront, and this is a dialog box that's been in Excel for many, many years. So if you're comfortable with this, then this is how you get to it, by clicking this little button here. Notice we're on accounting format. The symbol is a $sign. You can change that to other currencies. You can change the number of decimal points, which is doing the same thing that the ribbon is doing up here. And it gives you an example of what it looks like. So that's accounting format. If you change it to currency format, now let's change it like this, currency format, then let me go ahead and hit OK, and I'll show you the main difference. You still have a $sign. The main difference is when it's in currency format, the $sign sticks next to the data. When it's in accounting format, the $sign is way off to the left, and that's why I pointed that out earlier. Personally, I like accounting format better because the $sign's separated. It doesn't clutter your number up. But if you really want to see that $sign right on top of your number, then you would select the other option, which is the currency format. Now, one nice thing that the currency option has going for it is you have some different ways to display negative numbers. I can display negative numbers just as red text to kind of call them out. I can display negative numbers just as parentheses, just like the accounting format. And I can also display negative numbers as red text with parentheses. So it's nice if you're dealing with lots of negative and positive numbers. I might scan this table and I can easily see who the nice performers, hey, Jason's a great performer, and who's losing money for the company. So you have lots of different options in this menu here to go off and select between different kinds of guys here. The other thing I'll point out to you is if you highlight your cells, the other way to get to this menu, instead of clicking the flyout there, is to right-click on your data after you've highlighted it, go down to Format Cells. Format Cells is your best friend. It's basically pulling this menu up without going to the ribbon, and you have all of the different options there. Notice there's lots of other options here. There's General, which is just putting it as a number there. We can click that and see what happens. It's just going to stick that number there with no formatting at all. You can go to the number format. You can change the number of decimal places. You have some options for negative numbers. Currency, accounting, date and time. And of course, date and time we're going to get to later in a different lesson. So just be aware that there's lots of different options here. There's scientific and fractions and things like that that you can kind of play around with depending on what your data is. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to select currency, and we're going to select it with the red parentheses just because we want to be different. Now notice we have some other items here. We have social security numbers for all these people. We can type them in. This is not my real social security number. But let's say this was my real social security number. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for your social security number. And we can just, to make it interesting, we can copy and paste that down there, change a couple of digits, something like this. And we can just copy, put this guy here, put some more numbers here. Let's change the number here, 3. Okay, so now we have different social security numbers. They look similar, but they're different. Actually, this one needs to be changed something different. So they're all different now. So if we highlight these, notice there's no dashes in there, and it's a little bit hard to read. We can click on this flyout, or we can just right-click, go to Format Cells, go to Special. Under Special, there's a couple of different options. One of them is Social Security Number. So if you click that, Excel will automatically put the dashes in to your data. Notice if you click on a cell and you look at the contents up in the formula bar, there are no dashes here. So everything you're seeing here is just cosmetic. Same thing with the parentheses, same thing with the dollar signs. Really, it's just the number that's there. These formatting options are really just showing how to display the data. What if I have a phone number, 281-455-9874? Now, what if I wanted to type these people's phone numbers in here? What if I had 281-466-987, or let's say 9587, something like that. And I've got the same kind of deal. I could have a phone number for each one of these people here. I don't really want to put the dashes or the parentheses in, so I can just go either right click or I can just hit this guy right here, go over to Special, and I have a phone number option. And I click this guy, and now my phone number is formatted like a properly looking phone number. I don't have to type all these parentheses or dashes. Notice also under Special you have zip code options, which are postal codes in the United States, and so on. So if you have special data like social security numbers, phone numbers, dollar signs, things like that, you can make the data look very nice in Excel, even though the actual data itself, as we see here, is really just the numbers. This is just how it's displayed to us. The final thing I want to point out on this worksheet is this column here I have blank. So right now, Jason made $12,000 in annual salary for this company, and I have a raise here, and I have noted that it's a percentage, but what I have here is 0.0515. And if you know anything about percents, you know that you don't really ever multiply numbers by percentages. You multiply numbers by decimals. So if I shift this decimal 2 spots to the right, this is a 5.15% raise. This one here is a 4.25% raise. You don't want to multiply by 4.25 because that's going to be a huge raise. So what you do is you shift the decimal point 2 spots before you multiply. So if I wanted to create a formula here to see what the amount of the raise is actually going to be, I would put equals, here's my salary, times, here's my raise as a decimal, expressed as a decimal. I will hit enter, and then I would have negative 619. And then I would right click on this and I would hit Format Cells, and I would just put it, let's just say, in accounting. And so I did pick up my decimal with my cents there, but for some reason the dollar sign didn't appear. So I go back in here and I can say, all right, go ahead and force it to have a dollar sign. And there I have my accounting. So this is a formula that's doing a calculation. I have a $618.62 raise. And what I can do now is copy this formula down below. I can copy and paste, or I can just use this autofill to expand downward. And I can see the new raises that are generated. Basically, this guy is B3 times C3 and so on. It's propagated down. And also my format, which is the accounting format with the dollars and cents, is also carried down. So there you go. That's how you would carry down a formatting option. Now there's one nagging thing on this worksheet that I would like to fix, and that is that this really is a percentage. It's really supposed to say 5.15%, but when we multiply, we have to shift the decimal in order to affect the multiplication properly. Certainly if we multiplied by 5.15, this would be an enormous raise. It wouldn't be right. So what we can do is we can highlight the data here. We can click the flyout menu or right click, and we can go down and express it as a percentage. Or, let me go and hit cancel. Even easier, there's a percent button right here. So let me go ahead and click that. And what we will see is we have 5%, 4%, 3%, 4%, but we know that there's additional decimal information here. So let's go ahead and add some more decimals so we can see. There we go. I'll add enough so we get some zeros. This is the actual data here. So now you can see that Jason had a 5.15% raise. When you do this multiplication, you get $618.62. But when you click on my actual percentage, it'll be represented as 5.15% in the formula bar. But Excel knows when you multiply by percents, you need to really be multiplying by a shifted decimal version of that percentage. So the bottom line is when you use percents in Excel and you try to multiply by those percentages, Excel is going to shift the decimal spot appropriately. And that about wraps it up for this lesson. There's a lot of information here. Basically, you can take numbers, you can express them as currency, you can represent negative numbers with red parentheses if you like, you can express it as accounting format, number format, comma format that doesn't have the dollar sign at all. You have special formats for social security numbers and phone numbers, and also percentages, which can make the worksheet a little bit more readable. So go and play with these guys. I recommend that you just create a lot of entries, play with the different formatting options, and make sure you're comfortable with them, because this is something that you're going to use all the time as you work with Excel.